This is another discussion under process costing. This time we'll be talking about lost units. Now, when we say lost units, okay, normally we refer to missing units that are found at the end of the processing. Now, I say normally because it really depends on our inspection points, no? Lost units can be recognized, no, at the beginning of the process, during the process, and at the end of the process. Examples of lost units, you will have your spoilage losses. Okay, you also have your evaporation loss. Okay, marami yan. And you also have continuous losses. Now, the treatment for lost units, okay, under process costing is the same with the lost units under job order costing. Normally, they are deducted against the work in process if it's unrepairable. Okay, but if it's repairable, okay, which means you can improve, no? You can improve the nature of the spoilage, then you simply add the cost of the repair. The details for this one will be found in our discussion in job order costing. Yan, balikan nyo na lang yun. There are two kinds of lost units, no? You have your normal losses and you have your abnormal losses. Now, when we say normal losses, these are losses that are inherent in the production or in the operation. Normally, they are unavoidable, no? Like, for example, evaporation losses and shrinkage, no? Like, for example, if you are, ano ka magandang example dito? You're into perfume production, no? Diba? Let's say that your perfume, no? The fragrance that you are making has 5 major raw materials, no? Let's say, rough estimate lang just for discussion. You have 1 gallon of raw material A, 1 gallon for raw material B, 1 gallon for C, 1 gallon for D, and 1 gallon for E. Diba? Okay, when you try to put them together at the end of the process, your output is only 3.5 gallons. So, merong loss, para malaki yata, no? Meron tayong loss na 1.5 gallon. Okay, and that can be classified as maybe evaporation loss or shrinkage. Okay, and what is the treatment for normal losses? They are treated as product cost, which means they are allocated to our inventories, which we will discuss later, no? What kind of inventories are we going to use for the allocation? Okay? For abnormal losses naman, normally these are the unexpected losses, okay, considered to be avoidable. Normally, it comes from, management or operating inefficiencies, okay? Now, you can also have what do you call this? You have expected losses, kaya nga lang if your losses are beyond the acceptable limits na, the excess of that can be classified as abnormal losses, no? Some examples can be your losses that comes from calamities or fortuitous events, ganun. Kunyari merong abnormal machine downtime. Oh, yan. Abnormal machine downtime. Nasira. Okay, so yung mga ganun. And for abnormal losses, these are treated as an expense, okay? Or period cost. Siyempre, pag normal, product cost. Pag abnormal, period cost as a separate item in the income statement. Okay? Now, it can either be treated as a loss, no? Depende sa company, pero most of the time expense yan. Okay, now wala nang intro pa. Shout out sa ano nang tawag doon, nag-suggest, sir, pwede po ba na next time gawa ka ng mas maiksing discussion para sa next na topic. Okay, so sige, wala nang intro pa. Let's go to the example. Now, if you remember our example in process costing, just the basic computation of EUP, unit cost, and the cost of production report, okay, we will be using that same example. So, for those who did not yet listen to the video on process costing, yung basic concepts, okay, you can find them in our Canvas discussion pages. Okay, now, let's just review, no? This is the example actually. Pinili ko lang yung mga ibang slides na kailangan. So, you have the beginning beginning inventories at 200 units, okay? 200 units, and then you have your production started during the year or during May, okay? You started with 500, okay, and then you were able to complete 4,800 units, okay? So 200 plus 500, that's 5,200. Less 48, you will now have an ending inventory of 400 units. So to review that, okay, if this is your T accounts, you have here the beginning balance for your work in process, diba, na 200. You started 500, okay, so you started 500, 5,000 units, and then you completed 4,800. This is now your completed and transferred units, okay? So your ending balance now will be 400 units. In this case, there are no lost units yet. Okay, and if you try to look at the details of your work in process, as of this point, these are just your units. If you are going to reflect that in terms of values, okay, this 200, okay, will have a value of the total for this one. Okay, this 5,000 will have the value of this one, the total of these two, which means that the total cost for your debit should also be the total cost for your credit. Now, if you translate that to your cost of production report, actually this side right here, this is your total cost to be accounted for, the total of these two. Okay, and the total cost as accounted for, okay, will come from the cost of your ending and completed and transferred. Ganun lang naman yun eh. The total cost, of this one, 5,200, should be equal to this one. Kasi 5,2 din yan. Total debits is equal to your total credit. Saan pumunta yung cost nito? Beginning at saka yung started. Pumunta siya sa ending at saka doon sa completed and transferred. Okay, now dun sa third part ng cost of production report, yung reconciliation, you just have to prove, okay, that the total cost to be accounted for is equal to the total cost as accounted for. Okay, so let's start. Anyway, this is just a review. The first part will be the computation of your equivalent units of production. Okay, so how do we compute? Now, by the way, before I forget, this example is on weighted average. Let me write that down. Weighted average or average method. Okay? We start with average kasi pag naintindihan nyo na yung average, konting tweak lang, pwede na siyang maging FIFO. Diba? So, dito muna tayo sa average. How do we compute for your EUP? We start with the completed and transferred. Okay? So, you now have 4,800 coming from our T accounts. And then, you add the percentage of completion from your ending inventory. Okay? In this case, you have 400 times 40%, you get 160, and then 25%, you get 100. O, diba? Now, if you want to continue, and compute for your FIFO, you simply deduct, You simply deduct your percentage of completion, dito. Deduct the percentage of completion for the balance, for the beginning balance pala. Ayan. And you will now get your FIFO. Ayun lang naman yung difference. Anyway, now that you have your equivalent units, okay, the next thing that you will do is, you come up with the cost per equivalent units, okay, and this is your basic formula. Anyway, this is just a review, okay, so let's try to apply this formula. You have the cost, okay, of your beginning inventory, and then you also have the cost for your, for this month, okay. Anong nangyari sa pointer ko? Wait lang. Ayun, balik tayo. Ayun. So, you have the cost for the beginning inventory, okay, which is 15,150. Okay, this is already given. Inad ko lang. And your cost this month, this one is also given. If we go back to the previous slide. Okay, madali lang yan. Ayun. Okay, this, yan. Yung total niyan, and yung total nito is actually this one. Okay. Beginning and this month. So your total cost to be accounted for should be 734,675. This one is for the materials and this one is for the conversion. Okay, very easy to follow, You simply divide that by your equivalent units. okay, which is 4960 coming from our previous slide, and 49, you will now have the cost per equivalent units of production for materials and for conversion. Get the total of these two and you will get the total cost per equivalent units of production. Again, these are our costs, okay, if there are no lost units. Okay po. Now, feel free to pause the video, i-internalize nyo muna. Okay, na dapat as of this point naintindihan mo yung first part, computation of equivalent units of production. Second part, okay, computation of cost per equivalent unit. Okay, now on the third part will be the reconciliation. In this part, we have to prove, okay, naalala nyo to, beginning and then you have your started. Okay, saan kaya pumunta yung mga yan? So we have to prove that the total for this one will be equal to the total value of your ending inventory and your completed and transferred. Okay, so your 48, you simply multiply that with your 149. Okay, the total unit cost, no, total for materials and conversion. And then for your materials and conversion, use the individual cost per EUP. For materials, this one will be 76.25, tama pala. And this one will be based on 72.75. Okay, you multiply that, the total for these two will be 19,475. Total mo siya, dagdag mo siya sa 715 and the total is 434,675. Na-discuss na natin to noon, okay? If there are no errors, okay, magbabalanse yan. Actually, kahit may error, pag minsan nagbabalanse yan. So, mali pala yun, no? Dapat ang in-emphasize ko, not because the total cost to be accounted for and the total cost as accounted for is equal, it doesn't mean that your cost of production report is already okay. Okay, now, let's continue. Let's have the same example, but this time, okay, let's come up with your loss, idiots talaga yan, lost units. Okay, no? Ayan. Ano to? I-modify natin ng konti. This is the original data, but this time, instead of having an ending inventory of 400 units, gawin natin siyang 300 units. Okay, so paano na yan? Okay, how will your T accounts look like? Okay, you have here your beginning balance, no? Beginning balance which is nasaan na yun? Ayun. 200 units, and then you started 5,000 units. So at the end of the period, no, you should be able to finish 5,200 kung matatapos mo lahat yan. Okay, muna natin yan, kung matatapos mo lahat. Pero hindi mo natapos lahat ng 5,200, you were only able to finish 300 units. Okay, that's your ending balance, and you were able to hindi pala, ito yung natapos mo. Natapos mo yung, ayun, 4,800. You were able to finish 4,800 units lang, completed and transferred. And then, what is not finished? Syempre, yung ending balance in your work in process, which is 300. Now, if you try to look at this, parang kulang yata. Okay? Dapat ito, 5,200 din. So, this means that there is a difference of 100, and that is now your lost units. Okay. So, paano na po ito? Let's go to the computation of EUP. It's the same approach, no? Same approach. The only difference now is that you will have an item here for lost units. Now, I want to emphasize one thing, no? In our example earlier, this one is 400. And at 400, you multiply that by 40%, you will get 160. Okay? And 400 times 25, you'll get 100. But this time, since the ending inventory is only 300, that will now be the basis for 120 and 75. Okay po. Okay, that's where you multiply 40% and 25%. Okay, so dadagdag mo lang. Okay, and then plus your lost units. Okay, now for the first department, okay, normally we don't recognize lost units that happen at the beginning and during the process. We assume that these lost units on the first department are found at the end of the process. Okay, so yun yung normal na example natin. So, you now have 100 which was computed earlier via our T accounts. Okay, so you just add 100 there and you will get your new EUP. Okay, with a loss units of 100, your EUP now will be 5,020 and you will have 4,975. Sir, paano po kapag FIFO? Take note, no, this is an example using your average method. Kapag FIFO yan, same concept gaya dun sa basic natin noon, no? You simply deduct, no, if you can deduct, let's try to go back. You simply deduct your percentage of completion. Yung makisama itong mouse natin, ayun. You simply deduct the percentage of completion, mag-asterisk tayo dito. You simply deduct the percentage of completion for the beginning balance and you will get your FIFO EUP. Palaging ganito, no? So, from your average, yan yung shortcut average EUP, siya po ito. Okay, once you have that, ayan, this one pala. Once you have this, okay, you can now compute for your FIFO EUP by simply deducting the percentage of completion coming from your beginning balance. Okay. So, ayun. And, halos tapos na tayo because the procedure is the same, no? This is just for comparison. Without the lost units, you have 400 here, 160, 100. Your EUP under this method, average method, is 4960 and 49. But with lost units, you now have plus 100 dito. Okay, so you now have 5,020 and 4,975. Okay po, so ayun. Sir, shortcut, hindi po ba namin pwedeng idagdag na lang yung 100? The answer is no. Why? Because there might be changes in your completed and transferred, okay, or your ending inventory, no? If you remember your T accounts, di ba? Ano yung nandito? You have your ending balance, completed and transferred, and then you have your lost units. In this case, ang binago natin ay ending balance. Once na nagbago yung ending balance natin, imagine from 400 naging 300, magbabago na rin po ito. From 160 and 100, it will become 120 and 75. So yung naririnig ko na chismis lang po yun. That the shortcut to arrive at your EUP, okay, using the average method, is simply to add the lost units. That's not true. Okay po. It's that it doesn't always apply, parang ganon. Pag minsan eto naman yung nagbabago, no? We can have our ending inventory to be still 400 units pero yung completed and transferred baka maging 47 yan. Okay, so ganon lang po. Now, let's continue. Okay, let's assume that you were able to compute and understand the EUP with lost units. The next step now, okay, ito yung kinumpare natin. The next step now is to calculate the cost per equivalent unit for the period. Okay, let's just apply this formula from our previous discussion. Okay, so dati ganyan siya, no? Ito yung old na EUP, pero ang bagong EUP kasi natin, ito na eh. So you have these costs, you simply divided by your computed EUP, okay, after considering your loss units, and you will now have the new cost per EUP. In this case, it's 75.34 and 71.65. You get the total and you will get 146.99. Although, natetempt akong mag-round off sa 147, I tried that. Kaya nga lang hindi siya magbabalance. Okay, so para mas maganda yung mathematics natin mamaya. Okay, let's just stick to 146.99. Okay po. Now, after computing for your cost per EUP, yung total, okay, for materials and for conversion, you can now compute for your reconciliation. But before we go there, let's just try to compare, no? This is your unit cost. This is your unit cost, 75.34 and 71.65 with your lost units. Without lost units coming from our previous slide, okay, it's 149, 76.25 and 72.75. Nakita nyo yung difference? Okay. So, ayun, bakit sila nagbago? Kasi nagbago yung EUP. Same procedure yung ginawa natin. We use the same cost. Okay, the only difference is your EUP. Why is there a difference in your EUP? Because there is a lost units. There are lost units of 100 units. Okay, now, let's pretend that you are still enjoying this. Okay, let's go to your reconciliation. Okay, so how did you arrive at this? Diba? How do you compute this? This is actually 4,800 times your, magkano yung cost natin kanina? 146.99. Okay, so times 146.99. Okay, naku, pakicheck sana hindi ako nagkamali. And then what about this? This is 120. Okay, 120 times, ano yung cost ng materials natin kanina? 75.34. Okay, 75.34. And this one will be 75 times, what's this? 71.65. 71.65. Okay. Parang ninenervous ako na mali yung total. Pero kunyari, tama yan. The total of this one will be 14,414.63. You add this, your cost this month. Okay. Ayan. Plus the cost of what was transferred out, you will get 719,975. Kung wala yung lost units, hindi siya magbabalanse, di ba? Kasi kanina dapat is 734. And then you just add, no? You add the cost of your lost units. So how did we arrive at this? This is actually 100 times, wait, ano na yung cost natin kanina? Times, ayun pala, 146.99. Actually, 9919. Hindi ako nag-round off. Kapag nag-round off ako dito ng 147, hindi po lalabas ito. Okay, so, ayun. So, tapos na tayo. Diba? Madali lang yung lost units. Pero sir, paano kapag FIFO? Ang papalitan mo lang talaga ay yung computation ng EUP. And then you do the same procedure. Okay. Sir, yung lost units, okay? You have your lost units na normal and abnormal. Now, if this is normal, okay, this cost will be allocated to your inventories, which I will discuss later. If it is abnormal, okay, it will be treated as a separate item in your income statement. Pwedeng loss or abnormal loss in production, ganun, or basta parang title na gagawa ka lang ng title na representing this loss, which could be treated as an expense or loss, gaya ng diniscuss natin kanina. Okay po, so ganun lang po siya kadali. Ayan, now to compare, naku patay, umuulan na. Kapag medyo may yan, may gumaganyan na na naririnig, ulan na yon. Okay, so let's continue. This one is coming from our earlier example. Dito wala pong loss units. It's 734,675. With loss units, it's still 734,675. Okay, so ayun lang. Those are the common questions, no? Kapag tinanong ka, what's the cost of your lost units? O di 14699.99. Kapag sinabi na this one is treated as an abnormal loss, how much will be absorbed or allocated to your inventories? Your answer will be 0. Why? Because if this is treated as an abnormal loss, it should be shown in your income statement. Yung mga trick questions na ganun, madali lang sagutan kapag naiintindihan mo yung concept. Pag minsan tatanungin ka, how much is the cost of the working process and the inventory for this department? Okay, so ayan, madali na lang siyang computein. Okay po? Okay, so all costs are accounted for kapag nag-equal yung cost to be accounted and cost as accounted for. Okay, so tapos na tayo. Pero ano ba yung mga kailangan nating tandaan dito, mga quick takeaways? Okay, may nagsuggest kasi, sir, pwede bang sa lost units? Kasi nalilito kami at saka ang haba ng discussion doon sa chapter namin. Pwede bang magbigay ka ng mga tips, okay? tsaka mga shortcuts. Okay, sige, ano ba yung mga kailangan nating tandaan dito? Let's start with the T accounts, no? Number one, you should be able to understand the flow of your work in process. You have here your beginning balance and then your ending balance. You have your started in process and then you have your completed and transferred. Now the total should always be the same. Okay, this one should always be the same. Sir, paano po kapag hindi siya nag-equal? Then magkakaroon ka na ngayon dito ng lost units. Take note, these are in units. So, kung kinuha mo naman yung value nito, kasi may value yan eh. Ito actually yung cost to be accounted for yung total niyan. Kapag tinotal mo siya in pesos. Ito naman yung cost as accounted for. No? Okay po? So, dapat mag-equal palagi. Yan. Ito, pwedeng maging, ano yung sinabi natin kanina? Ito po ay pwedeng maging normal. Pag normal, i-allocate yan sa inventories. Kapag abnormal naman, okay, abnormal, pupunta yan sa income statement natin. Okay. So now, meron ka ng lost units. Kailangan mo kasi ito kapag nag-compute ka ng EUP. Let's review. How do you compute for your EUP? Assuming na uneven tayo, no? Kapag uneven, iba yung percentage of completion ng materials natin. Okay? So, anong kulay kaya ang maganda? Ito mahirap kapag may pinagpipilian ka palang kulay, no? Mag-iisip-isip ka pa. Okay, so let's say you have here your materials and then you have here your conversion cost. We start with your completed and transferred. Let's erase that. You have here the completed and transferred. Okay. And then you add the percentage of completion for your ending inventory. Okay? So, ay lang naman. Tapos, anong mangyayari pag naidagdag mo yung ending inventory mo? Ang tawag mo dito ay, EUP ng average. Diba? Yan yung normal. Sir, paano kapag FIFO naman? O di ibawas mo dito yung percentage of completion mo ng, ng beginning inventory mo naman. Pag naibawas mo na yan, you will now have your EUP for FIFO. Eto kapag walang lost units. Paano po sir kapag merong lost units? Okay, so ganun pa rin naman. Ganun pa rin. Lagay natin dito. So you have here your materials. Walang pinagbago. You have here your conversion cost, no? You start with your completed and transferred units. Sir, saan ko makukuha yan? Punta ka sa the accounts. Okay, dagdag natin yung percentage of completion ng ending balance. Okay. Okay. Tapos, ganito yan. Idadagdag mo yung lost units kung i-recognize siya. In this case, ni-recognize natin siya kasi it happened at the end. Mamaya, bigyan ko kayo ng shortcut kung kailan siya i-recognize talaga. Okay. So, kapag naidagdag mo na yan, ano na yung makukuha mo dito? This is now your EUP using the average method. Ayun lang naman, sisingit mo siya. And then, you want to compute for FIFO. Di bawas mo yung percentage of completion kay coming from your beginning inventory. Tadaan! And you will now have your EUP FIFO. Pag-aralan mo itong mabuti, i-memorize mo siya kapag hindi mo pa maintindihan. Okay, kasi ito na yung pinakamabilis at pinakamaigsing approach sa pag-compute ng EUP ng weighted average at EUP ng FIFO. Okay, kapag meron ka na yung mga EUP na yan, ng average at EUP ng FIFO, paano na po yung may magbabago po ba doon sa cost of production report natin? Yes, isa lang yung pagkaka-reflect ng lost units mo doon sa cost as accounted for. Okay po? So, that's it. Okay? Ano yung mga affected dito? Number 1, kapag may lost units, magbabago yung ending balance mo. Kasi nga may nawala eh. Or magbabago yung completed and transfer mo, no? Transferred. Or baka magbago silang dalawa. Like for example, out of 100 units na lost units mo, eto originally was 400. Kanina ginawa nating 300, di ba? Malay mo magiging 350 yan. Okay? Tapos eto magiging 4750. So may nawala. Okay? So ganun din yung mga approach niya. Okay, so ayun lang. So far, ano pa ba yung mga kailangan nating maalala dito? Kapag nagbasa kayo, medyo nakakalito yung yung point of recognition ng lost units eh. Yung first and second department. Okay? Discuss natin yun, no? Kapag first department kasi, paano ba to para mas simple? Okay, so kapag first department, ayaw na magsulat. Department. Okay, pag first department, if the loss happened at the beginning, okay, and or during, there will be no recognition. Ala. Anong effect nito? For example, in our first department, we found out that there are lost units of 100. Pero, okay, these lost units was found at the inspection point between or during the process. Okay, kapag sinabing no recognition, udi wag ka lang magdagdag ng lost units dito. Okay? And your EUP will be as if there are no lost units. Ganun lang po siya. In the first department, if it was found at the end, no? At the end of the process, yes, it will be recognized. Ayan, recognized. So, that's for the first department. Okay, sir, paano naman yung second department? Parehong-pareho lahat. Okay, ay, sige, burahin natin to para for consistency lang. Nakalimutan ko yung kulay daw. Ang pangit na nga ng sulat ko, tapos boring pa, di ba? O di, baka pwede akong bumawi sa kulay man lang. Ayan, second department. Shout out pala sa ayaw maniwala na video ko to. Ayan. Kung may questions po kayo, no? If you have questions, please feel free to ask them. Yun palagi yung sinasabi ko. Ask them in our discussion board. May chat naman, chat LTI yung canvas natin. You can drop me a message. Okay, huwag nyo na padaanin sa UC files. Nakaka-toxic yun. Anyway, let's continue. If the loss happened at the second department and then yung inspection point mo is, pag sinabing inspection point, to simplify, basta kung kailan mo siya nahanap. Okay, kailan mo na-identify itong loss units na to. Kung na-identify mo siya at the start of the process or at the or during the process, okay, then it will be recognized using the previous cost. Ayan. Tama ba spelling ko ng previous cost? Idiots kasi ako eh. And previous cost, no, coming from the first department. But if, no, it was found at the end or it happened at the end of the production, parang mali pakinggan yun eh. Although there are some textbooks, no, na yun yung term na ginagamit. It happened at the end of the production. Siguro it was found out at the end of the production. Ganun dapat, no? Or the inspection point is at the end of the production and they found out that there were lost units na ganito. Now for second department, they will be recognized using the previous cost plus the current cost. Okay, and there are some examples in your textbook, no? Hindi ko na ipapakita dito kasi madali lang naman sundan yung example. Medyo mahaba pero madali lang. Kasi konti lang naman yung nagbago. Computation ng EUP because of your lost units. Okay, and the computation of your cost per unit because of the lost unit or changes in your EUP. Okay, so ayun. Ano pa yung mga kailangan nating tandaan? Yeah, may question din. Sir, paano po yung allocation po ng loss units kapag normal loss siya? Okay, so ganito 'yan. No, kapag normal loss, okay, kapag normal loss, okay, depende kasi yan if you're using FIFO or average. Now, let's assume that we are using the average method. Okay? Now, depende na naman yan kung kailan siya na hanap. It could be identified no at the start. Could be identified at the start of the process, during the process, or it could be at the end, no? At the end of the process. Okay. So kapag average method yan, okay, it will be allocated. If it's found at the start, it will be allocated using the completed and transferred and the balance of your ending inventory. Ganun din po kapag during you allocate that to your completed and transferred, okay, and the balance end. If it's found at the end, okay, it will be allocated to your completed and transferred. Okay po, so that is for your average. But if you are using FIFO and then the loss, no, was found at the start, okay, during, o kaya end, di ba? Saan mo ngayon i-allocate yung value ng loss units? If it's found at the start, it will be allocated in your started, completed, and transferred units and the balance inventory. What if it happened during? Okay, it will be allocated, okay, using the beginning balance, okay, and your started, completed, and transferred units plus the balance end. What if it was found at the end? Okay, then it will be allocated using the beginning balance and the started, completed, and transferred units. Okay, so ayun, eto kapag normal. Okay, kapag normal. Pero paano naman kapag abnormal? Saan mo siya i-allocate? There will be no allocation. Why? Well, you are going to reflect this as a separate item in your income statement. Magiging expense yan or loss. Magiging period cost. Di ba? From AE 103. Ito magiging product cost. Okay po. So, ayun. Ano pa yung mga normal na tinatanong dito? Okay. Pag minsan, no, eto hindi nawawala eh. What's the total cost of lost units? Pagkabisado mo yung cost of production report mo, the total cost of lost units, yan, is equal to the unit cost na na-compute mo. Ganun lang kadali. Unit cost times your, ayan, times your lost units. Okay po. Ayan. Ano pa ba? Mga kailangan nating malaman dito. May mga nakalimutan ba ako? For emphasis pala, dito kanina baka malito kayo, ulitin natin tong part na to, no? Okay, kasi mayroon akong sinabi na not recognized and recognized. Okay, so let's have another slide. Ano yung ibig kong sabihin kanina? Kunyari, we are using the, sige, average and FIFO na lang. Okay. Magkuhan tayo, kahit sa EUP na lang tayo pag-umpisa. EUP Computation. So, if the loss happened at the start, okay, kunyari first department, start and ano pa yung isa, during, sabi natin no recognition, di ba? Okay, versus if the loss happen at the end. EUP computation tayo, assuming we have even, no? Even application, although applicable pa rin to kahit na uneven. So where do we start? We start with your completed and transferred units. Okay, we add the percentage of completion for your beginning. No, hindi pala beginning. Ending balance. Okay, balance end of your working process. Yan, balance end of your working process. My lost units. Okay, so plus your lost units. In this case, wala. Kasi the loss happened no, at the start or during the process. Pero kapag end, ayan, i-recognize natin siya. O yun, o nakita nyo na. Okay, kaya pagdating ngayon dun sa EUP, no? EUP ng average method, di ba parang wala ring loss unit? So yung normal na EUP lang. May effect lang siya kapag nangyari siya at the end. Okay, and then if you're going to compute for your FIFO, you simply deduct the percentage of completion of your beginning balance. And then you will now have your EUP, first in, first out. Okay, so I guess that's it. If there are questions, gaya ng sinabi ko kanina, please feel free to ask them, no, in our chat box or discussion boards. Okay, or you can ask them via email, ayan, or doon sa comment section ng announcement, pwede rin po yun. Okay, hindi ko kayo matutulungan sa UC files. Okay, so ayun, dapat good vibes lang po tayo palagi. Okay, smile, and I guess that's it. Salamat po ng marami.